Priya. On behalf of the Center for Public Policy Research, Kochi, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished delegates, to our advisors, media, and to all well-wishers present here. The Center for Public Policy Research is a think tank dedicated to extensive and in-depth research on current economic, social, and political issues. We strive to initiate policy changes by publishing our research and by framing policy debates and discussions on various subjects. The major cross areas of the organization's research work have been in international relations, governance, education, health, law, livelihood, strategy, and security and urban reforms. Monash University is focused on making positive and lasting impacts which deliver applied outcomes and solutions to meet the needs of government, industry, and communities. They pursue a research agenda based on excellence, relevance, and impact. The researchers make highly significant contributions that bring real and positive change to the lives of people all over the world. The Faculty of Law at Monash University has a strong commitment to diverse and innovative forms of high-quality and cross-disciplinary legal research that has governmental, professional, and social impact. The Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, IPOI, is an open, inclusive, and non-treaty-based global initiative for mitigating challenges, especially in the maritime domain, through practical cooperation in 7 thematic areas: maritime security, maritime ecology, maritime resources, capacity building and resource sharing, disaster risk reduction and management, science, technology and academic cooperation, and trade connectivity in maritime transport. The IPOI seeks to build a sense of community by creating new partnerships with like-minded countries spanning the large expanse of the Indo-Pacific. The IPOI Scholar Summit Roundtable Conference aims to further the scholarship in the Indo-Pacific region along with deliberating on the important issues and challenges that concern the region. Today's Roundtable Conference discussion in the context of ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific and with the India-ASEAN Plan of Action adopted in September 2020 will help to build links with, leverage and shall drive closer engagement between India, Australia, and ASEAN countries. We are delighted to have amongst us eminent personalities who have vast academic expertise and who would shed more light into this discourse. I kindly invite Mr. Ramsey Him, Research Fellow, Cambodian Institute for Cooperation and Peace, Cambodia. He is also a lecturer at the Department of International Studies, Institute of Foreign Languages, Royal University of Phnom Penh. His research interests include Cambodia's domestic and foreign affairs, major power rivalry, and political security in Southeast Asia, as well as various strategic issues concerning the region. He has written and attended national, regional, and international conferences on these matters. Next, Mr. Mukund V. Narvekar, Assistant Professor, School of International and Area Studies, Goa University, India. Before joining the School of International Studies, he was teaching at Government College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Sankalin, for 7 years. Some of his recent publications include India's Blue East Policy, a Maritime Perspective in 2018, Maritime Cooperation and Security Framework in Indian Ocean in 2017, Emerging Maritime Threats and Challenges in India's Maritime Domain, post-2611 in 2015. Next, Mr. Arif Imran Hidayat, Maritime Security and Diplomacy, Maritime Institute of Malaysia. He has expertise in regional geopolitics, piracy, and armed robbery, maritime terrorism, maritime cybersecurity, and drugs, weapons, and human trafficking in Asia Pacific. Arif graduated with a Master's of Social Sciences degree in Strategy and Diplomacy from University Kelantan, Malaysia, Institute of Diplomacy and Foreign Relations under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Ms. Amrita Karambekar, Research Associate with the Canada International Foundation, India. Her research focus is the Indo-Pacific with specific reference to the Quad and Indian Ocean. She is also a doctoral candidate at the JNU Jawaharlal Nehru University on the subject of naval modernization in Southeast Asia. She has previously worked with the Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies and interned with the Indian Council of World Affairs. Dr. Harishankar K. Satyapalan, Assistant Professor at the School of Legal Studies, Cochin University of Science and Technology, Gujarat, India, and Research Fellow at CPPR. He received his PhD from the Faculty of Law, National University of Singapore, and post an LLM from the Indian Law Institute, New Delhi. Prior to joining the doctoral program at NUS, he served as an assistant professor at the National Law University, Jodhpur, India. Mr. Lucio Blanco Pirlo III, Research Fellow at the Asia Pacific Pathways to Progress Foundation, Philippines. He is also a member of the Board of Directors of the Philippine Association for Chinese Studies. He was formerly a technical assistant with the National Coast Watch Council Secretariat under the Office of the President of the Republic of the Philippines. He also served as a research associate and consultant for several projects on maritime issues and Philippine foreign policy. Mr. Siswanto Rushdie, founder director of the National Maritime Institute and independent maritime think tank in Jakarta, Indonesia. Previously, he was Indonesia correspondent for the London-based shipping newspaper Lloyd's List for years. His career as a journalist spans more than 15 years. He has intensive training in journalism and communication. He also studied maritime security at S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies, Singapore. Dr. Eric Fregon, Adjunct Fellow at IRASEC, IRSEM, and at the French Naval Academy, Sorbonne, has joined us virtually. He was lecturer at SUSS, Singapore University of Social Sciences in 2019-20 and at the French Naval Academy in 2012-2018. This latter position gave him the opportunity to embark on mistral class ships in 15-17 to brief midships on board across Suez Canal, Bab el-Mandeb, as well as Malacca, Sunda, and Lombok Straits, with a stopover in Andaman Islands. Dr. Gu Han-Dang, Senior Research Fellow at the Center for International Law, National University of Singapore, has joined us virtually. His area of expertise includes international law, law of the sea, international environmental law, and geographical focus, with a geographical focus on Southeast Asia and South China Sea. Dan holds a GSc in International Marine Environmental Law from Dalhousie University and a Master in International Trade Law from University of Professor Kiti Prasitsuk, Professor of Political Science, Thammasat University, Thailand, has also joined us virtually. His work experiences include Vice Rector for International Affairs and Director at the Institute of Peace Studies at the university. He is currently Advisory Committee for the International Studies Center at the Thai Ministry of Foreign Affairs and used to serve as a Strategic Committee at the Thai Ministry of Defense. The panel discussion will be moderated by Mr. K. Thomas. Mr. K. Thomas has over 36 years of distinguished service in the Intelligence Bureau, Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India. He has worked in various capacities in different parts of India, including insurgency affected areas of the Northeast, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Andhra Pradesh, and Kerala, and is well versed in the socio-economic, political, and developmental issues in these states. He has vast experience in the fields of intelligence, national security, policing, human and civil rights, ethnic conflicts, and left-wing extremism. As a fellow of the National Police Academy in Hyderabad, he had undertaken a research project on policing and human rights in Andhra Pradesh during 1998. He is also a senior fellow at the CPPR. Now I request Mr. K. Thomas to give an overview of today's Roundtable conference and take over the proceedings.
Thank you all to Sharon. Welcome to the distinguished guests, participants and speakers of this scholar meet conducted by Center for Public Policy Research Cochin-based think tank, in collaboration with University of Australia and supported by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Australia. Ms. Sharon has already introduced all the speakers of this office, scholars meet section, the vast experience and expertise and skills in the field of maritime security, and they are all well-known research scholars, academicians, and people in the areas of this maritime security. So their deliberations will definitely be enriched. The ongoing discourse on Indo-Pacific Convergence Initiative, which has become one of the major agenda, the various programs and research work of this CVPR headed by Dr. Karnas. So, before starting with the proceedings of the speakers, I'd like to have a few words about this scholars meet and its relevance in the current international scenario and geostrategic situation in the world. As already pointed by the host, this Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative started as early as in 2019 during the East Asia Summit held in Bangkok, formally launched by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. It was part of an agenda, a mechanism to strengthen the cooperation of like-minded countries in the Indo-Pacific and bring them to a common platform and to pursue an agenda of an open, free, prosperous and peaceful Indo-Pacific. It is essential for the global security and economic prosperity. And a lot of work in this direction has been done. And especially in the light of this, CBPR has also done a lot of work. And this scholars meet, followed by 2 days international dialogue on Australia-India, Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, will also deliberate about the various issues connected with this topic. So, with these introductory words, we will just start the proceedings of this scholars meet. First, I will invite Mr. Rexek to start the proceedings with his presentation of the paper. So, before starting, just have a few words. Because of the time constraint, you may kindly present only the synopsis of the paper which you have presented, you have prepared. And after that, there will be question and answer section. Because this August audience, there will be a lot of distinguished guests, people in the field of maritime security and foreign policy matters who can throw in a lot of light on this subject. This is where I invite Mr. Ramsek to start the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to be clarify, how many minutes do you like me to speak?
To 5 to 6 minutes.
5 minutes. Mr. Chair and Mr. Thomas, Dr. Navinaj, Dr. Sakuja, distinguished guests, respected colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I'd like to thank you very much, CEO, for inviting me to attend this. I want to stress at the beginning that all the views expressed here are my own and do not reflect my affiliation. And the presentation today that I will present is about promoting peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific, the key roles of Asean, Australia, and India. Because informally, I started my communities here, many people were present. Many negative views about Asean, so I left into it. I want to compare it with positive note on way to solve the problem rather than discuss what was there. So I'm going to discuss issues that the trio face and proposed ways that the three can work together to have more peace and prosperity in the Pacific. In recent years, more and more investors have focused on the Indo-Pacific. Many players come, many strategies have been, as you all aware of it. And three of them are Asean, Australia, and India. While different in detail and strategic standpoint, the three share, among other things, the common desire for peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific, as well emphasized in their strategic document. It is understandable, given that they all share concerns on some regional challenges that have broader strategic implication on them specifically and the Indo-Pacific region as a whole. Amid this challenging time, it is important that the trio step up their collective efforts to play a positive role in managing key regional issues to further promote peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific. ASEAN, Australia, and India have many common challenges. Some of the key ones include the following. First, the US-China rivalry has been a cause of concern for all the three. The increased anticipation of competition between the two powers have become more and more confrontational, spanning on almost major spheres, including political security, diplomacy, trade, defense, technology, among other things. Washington, D.C. and Beijing have become more hostile to each other. It has been hardly uncommon nowadays that the two have regularly threatened insult against each other. Such rivalry has become a deeply concerning issue for many parts of the world, particularly the Indo-Pacific region, where the strain of unhealthy competition between the US and China has been played on a near regular basis. More concerningly, the US-China rivalry in the Indo-Pacific is dangerous as it involves tendencies between the two to have fixed views on certain issues, including how the region should be run in general, and how issues such as the Mekong, the South China Sea, the East China Sea, the Cross Strait, and the Korean Peninsula should be addressed in particular. With their massive military and economic might, any fixed differences on certain regional issues between the US and China can lead to strategic miscalculation that might result in all-out armed conflicts if not managed properly. Second, the decline of multilateralism has been another challenge. While this phenomenon has not been new, multilateralism has increasingly lost its peace in recent years. Regional and international bodies such as ASEAN and the UN have faced difficulty in finding effective action to address ongoing issues such as the Myanmar crisis, Russia war in Ukraine, as well as other armed conflict and humanitarian crises in many parts of the world. It should be noted that in many of these cases, there has been a considerable number of responsible members of the international community has shown commitment to address this issue on the basis of relevant international law and norms, but sadly with no avail. Questions, therefore, should be asked why this is the case and what should be done to reform multilateral body and restore confidence in multilateralism. Whatever the answer might be, ASEAN, Australia, and India should, in terms of work and action, aspire to be strong proponents for multilateralism. Multilateralism, imperfect as it may be, is still a far more viable option for the trio in helping maintain peace and prosperity in the region than other options, especially the one where quote-unquote Mike is right. Another key challenge is finding ways to prepare the for the post-COVID-19. For the past 2 years, COVID-19 has negatively impacted all the world, taking away millions of lives, infected hundreds of millions of lives, changing way of living, and putting strains on political, economic, social fabric of many countries. Indo-Pacific is not an option to this, as much so to ASEAN, Australia, and India. Recovery from the pandemic with such scale will not be a easy task and will require well-coordinated combination of national, regional, and international efforts. Some priority efforts should be to boost vaccination rate in the region, discover safe possible ways for countries in the region to reopen the economy, and strengthen the regional preparation system to prepare for future pandemic. To further promote the common desire for peace and prosperity in the region, it is important that ASEAN, Australia, and India should be active in joining effort to address these regional challenges and beyond. The trio should each have more comprehensive strategic view on their regional interests. Their view should look beyond their domestic land in order to take into account also their long-term interests. Therefore, in the short term, they should concretely operationalize their written strategy and put them in practice to bring real deliverables on the ground that are helpful to manage peaceful relations in the Indo-Pacific. In the medium and long term, the three should actively seek consultations with each other to come up with strategies that are more coordinated and synergized between their respective national interests and regional interests. Amid the ongoing rivalry between the US and China, ASEAN, Australia, and India should continue to constructively engage with the two superpowers. The trio should not attempt to pit any one against another. Given the ASEAN position, the regional bloc can serve as a mediator to bridge gaps of trust between the US and China in order to encourage the two superpowers to identify and establish some ground rule of engagement and de-escalation mechanism in their issue of mutual concern in the region. This can only be done if Washington, D.C. and Beijing agree to ask ASEAN to do so, and ASEAN itself agree to take up this challenging task. Australia and India should support and encourage ASEAN to undertake this positive mediating role. ASEAN, Australia, and India should continue more works in place to support strengthen multilateralism. The three should try to find a common voice among themselves on various issues in international forums and work jointly to gather support and resources in order to address those issues. The trio should also be bold in taking up challenges to lead efforts in reforming various international institutions to make them more responsive to issues of mutual concern. While this is a long process, it is important that the three start the process. And my last point is, the three should also be proactive in discussion to prepare the region for the post-COVID-19. Among other agenda, the trio should advocate establishing a more resilient regional protection system for future pandemic. More attention should be put in place on areas including having protocol for intra-regional cooperation on healthcare sector, establishing a regional pandemic data and information exchange center, supporting healthcare investment, and strengthening implementation of a more comprehensive social security system, especially in less developed countries in the region. I look forward to listening to all the presentation and look forward to the discussion. Thank you very much.
You have presented all the factors, especially the threat of China into South China and West China, the East China, the seas, and also the threat of maritime sector, the terrorism, that is posing much concern to ASEAN other countries instead of the region. So you have touched upon the action diplomacy and the need for strengthening a regional level setup for fighting pattern type issues in future. Thank you for the presentation. An interrelated subject will be now presented by Dr. Mukund Tarpekar, that is understanding the strategic boundaries of India's perspectives on Indo-Pacific. I invite Mr. Dr. Mukund Tarpekar to present it. I think she got the time.
Thank you, Chair. At the outset, let me thank the Center for Public Policy Research, Monash University, Department of Foreign Trade and Foreign Affairs and Trade, Australia, for having me. I'll be talking about briefly understanding the strategic control of India's perspective on Indo-Pacific. Well, let me begin with the statement that Indo-Pacific has emerged as a strategic game changer in the international structure in today's international relations. This international structure is definitely dominated by an existing superpower, the US, and at the same time, there is a belligerent rise of new competitor, China. The advent of China, along with its military power or military might and economic rise, has sent static tremor in the world already. In fact, the early signs of this tremor have been felt in the South China Sea region and its total disregard for the rule of law. This has been an anticipated phenomenon and a change in Beijing's behavior under the possible rise of a new world order, probably dominated by China shortly. It has certainly become the center and is determined to play a role in 21st century international relations. Nevertheless, middle power and aspiring regional power such as India has been caught up in the structural transformation in the region. It is predominantly being observed that at the macro regional level of Southeast Asia and at the macro level of Indo-Pacific has influenced by the US. For India, China's rise has its manifestation and more so of its implications for India's national interest. Recent border skirmishes in the Himalayas are one of such implications. Furthermore, the rise of China and Chinese maritime forces and their growing presence in the Indian Ocean, particularly in the close proximity of India's exclusive economic zone, or more so in the Andaman Sea recently, has raised serious security concerns. This also means that it has cut off strategically at its two extremes, and therefore making it imperative for India to act on it at the moment. Meanwhile, India's strategic shift from its look-is policy to act-is policy has enabled India to engage the prolific region in the East by promoting economic cooperation, cultural ties, and developing strategic relationship with the countries of Indo-Pacific. Furthermore, the confluence of the two seas and the strategic significance in economic and maritime nature has strengthened India's bilateral relations with Japan, the US, and Australia. In addition, the quadrilateral cooperation between Australia, India, Japan, and United States is another very important achievement for India to reach out into Indo-Pacific. For India, Indo-Pacific is of strategic importance for its economic development and maritime connectivity. It is one of the largest geographic space that expands right from the east coast of Africa to the western coast of the US. More also, India's engagement in the Indo-Pacific has seen various other forums. India has been playing a very active role right from its Indian Ocean Rim Association, East India Summit, Asean Regional Forum, and many more so. Now, this shows that India is committed to the core value of inclusivity and openness of the Indo-Pacific. Certainly, the emergence of the concept of Indo-Pacific and its strategic significance has enabled nations to redefine their perspective. The US pivot to Asia and the rise of China has put the entire Indo-Pacific in a strategic alignment. In this evolving and changing international scenario, India, along with Australia, enjoys a geostrategic position that gives it a vantage point. From this standpoint, it is pertinent to witness the importance of India-Australia as a middle-level power, and more so in balancing and maintaining the multilateral balance of power in Southeast Asia. Further, India and Australia have raised concerns about the Chinese assertiveness in the region. Their concerns are more valid given the evolving dynamics and their possible impact on the Indo-Pacific. Therefore, cooperation with the regional powers of Southeast Asia at the bilateral as well as at multilateral forum necessity. This would also help to ensure that no one power dominate or influence or exercise any sort of a hegemonic influence. In this context, therefore, India and Australia have a common strategic understanding in the Indo-Pacific, and therefore, IPOI initiative or a partnership will help to shape a maritime cooperation in the Indo-Pacific to support an open, inclusive, resilient, and prosperous rule-based maritime order, alongside India's and Australia's commitment to supporting Asean Centrality brings in multilateral balance in the strategic competition in the Indo-Pacific. With this ongoing geopolitics and geostrategic contestation in the Pacific, therefore, IPOI partnership is a hope to bring much needed stability and promoting strategic multilateral balance, economic development, and constructive alternative for peace and prosperity in the region. Moreover, the recent 2+2 ministerial dialogue between India and Australia and the free trade agreement is truly a watershed moment between the two partners. And to conclude, India and Australia stands right now at the crossroad of structural change and evolving power dynamics in Indo-Pacific. The ongoing competition and the change in US-China relations have forced the two nations to evaluate the utility of the current political and security framework in the region. Therefore, it has created a space for reassessment of the contemporary regional security apparatus. In this context, Ascent Centrality has a significant role to play. Well, China, on the other hand, will continue to rush to influence the region as well as global affairs. Moreover, the rapid rise of China, its aspiration, and its dominant role will definitely shape the course of the rapid course of the event. Therefore, Australia-India IPOI partnership is an act to have a holistic dialogue and strengthen international cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. Thank you.
Thank you, Many of us that a lot of facts connected to this IPO, IPOI. And one thing particularly to be mentioned that the agenda of the conference is one person for the Indo-Pacific Ocean inclusive and the increasing importance of Australia and India is strengthening the international I also wanted to highlight one important aspect that Australia is now playing very vital role. Australia is now playing a very vital role in this Indo-Pacific regional district. For example, the best example is the AUKUS Treaty. This AUKUS Treaty itself signifies how important role that Australia can play in the Indo-Pacific region. And more than that, this American President Joe Biden in September 2021 has highlighted that US has no allies or more reliable than Australia. So, viewed in this aspect, Dr. Mukund has highlighted the very significant role that Australia and India can play in strengthening in the international cooperation in the background of the Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative. And an interrelated topic will be dealt with by Mr. Ali Imran Ilai, a researcher from Maritime Institute of Malaysia. I invite Mr. Ali to present this question.
Thank you. So first of all, I just want to thank CPPR and Monash University for having me. My talk is actually about Ascen's role in maintaining a secure and prosperous Indo-Pacific. Although my topic is quite similar to what previous two speakers have been talking about, I kind of have a different perspective in that. So first of all, Southeast Asia is an area which really wants to maintain its peace and stability, and it does face threats in the South China Sea. And during this time of uncertainty, for example, during COVID-19, hedging strategy has actually become more prevalent in times of ease. So in this last 10 years, Asia has actually been rising. The economy has been shifting from the west to the east, and ASEAN and Southeast Asian countries have actually benefited from this rise. And with this, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership demonstrates that economic integration which brings Asia's rise when compared to the West. However, whilst we are talking about the Indo-Pacific, ASEAN and Southeast Asian countries still want to maintain the constructive engagement with China because we are experiencing this rise, both economically and culturally. Next up, I want to talk about Ascent Centrality, and it's not really an empty word. It involves Ascent-led mechanism, involves all the major powers in the Indo-Pacific. This includes Australia, India, the US, and also China. So you can see East Asia Summit, the Asian Regional Forum, and the ASEAN Defense Ministers meeting plus. There's an avenue for people to collaborate and cooperate in order to create a more stable and prosperous Indo-Pacific. And with the outlook on the Indo-Pacific, it promotes cooperation. However, the Indo-Pacific cooperation in Southeast Asia is actually losing momentum. It was really hot when it came about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, but in recent times, lots of countries would rather face it bilaterally rather than multilaterally. So this is because the Indo-Pacific has been focused much on great power rivalry, which creates insecurity and greater bipolarization. And this insecurity is further exacerbated by the rise of non-traditional security threats. But if you look from a different strategy, for example, EU member states, they have an Indo-Pacific strategy that doesn't have similar threat perceptions to the United States, and rather they promote an open maritime strategy, which is something which ASEAN countries want more of, an inclusive Indo-Pacific strategy. Malaysia thinks that middle powers, for example, India and Australia, has a greater role to play. Together with ASEAN as middle powers, we have demonstrated this strong relation, and both Australia and India support Ascent Centrality. Malaysia and Australia's relation has been really strong. We can see it in the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, the Five-Power Defense Arrangement, Malaysia-Australia Joint Defense Program, and also the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. And Malaysia's relations with India, although a bit shaky the past few years, is still also strong. We have the Malaysia-India Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement, the Memorandum of Understanding on Defense Cooperation, and India also participates in cooperative mechanisms on the Straits of Malacca and Singapore, which Malaysia really appreciates. Not only that, the ASEAN-India Summit really demonstrates the strong love that India has for the ASEAN grouping. So the way forward is actually finding a way for these countries to cooperate. And what the Indo-Pacific strategy has been missing is a functional approach. Maritime cooperation should expand beyond traditional security and defense fields and focus on connectivity, economy, and the environment, and promote a cohesive and rules-based Indo-Pacific. So this could be cooperating in soft connectivity and soft infrastructure, not just hard infrastructure projects, and most importantly, strengthen the rule of law. And middle powers such as ASEAN, Australia, and India should step up to sustain the international rules-based order and explore ways to cooperate on responsive measures if the escalation of conflict were to ever happen. And most importantly, divert away from strategic competition and focus on economic and human security. Thank you.
Now, wrote down some discordance or differences among the Asian countries, and also the Malaysian perspective for Indo-Pacific issue. Definitely, there should be some discordance or differences among the Asian countries, and there are serious efforts are being made to sort out that strengthen the cooperation with ASEAN on part of the Indo-Pacific region. And ASEAN centrality is the main one of the pillars, and bonding closely today is also very, very important. Just if you I invite, is Amarnath Convergence to the center.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to thank CPPR, Monash University, and the Australian government for having me at this wonderful conference. So, my colleague has spoken a lot about what is it that is driving India into the Indo-Pacific. So, I'm going to avoid any repetition and merely state that. So I'm going to cover it very briefly. Usually, the Prime Minister's speech at the Shangri-La dialogue is taken as the course of articulation of India's views on and about the Indo-Pacific. But if you look at the policy projects that India has been doing in its maritime neighborhood, you can see this policy underway. In the way there has been a lot of attention given to the Indian Ocean, especially the smaller island states. The Indian policy towards the Indo-Pacific is based on the principles of openness and security, connectivity amongst countries, rule of law, regional stability, and prosperity, wherein all countries are free to exercise their choice. India's Indo-Pacific outlook is an extension of its ancient ties and cultural significance of the East, its long-standing ties with Southeast Asia, its rising trade and strategic footprint, and its willingness to act in the contemporary geopolitical changes. India's policy of Sagar, its ties with Asean states, its participation in various multilateral fora like BIMSTEC or MGC, partnerships with Japan, Korea, and also with the Pacific Island states, its ties with Russia and China. All of these reflect India's engagement in the Indo-Pacific. India also has experience with several nations. The Indian Navy has been conducting various bilateral and multilateral exercises in the Indo-Pacific region. As the Indian economy grows and as the world begins to integrate further, India's priority is to build a region based on peace. The Indo-Pacific is a national region and presents great opportunities to cooperate and collaborate. ASEAN is, of course, central to India's Indo-Pacific policy. We also believe that everyone should have equal access to region's resources. The trade regime should be open, rules-based, and in tune with international law. And it should also strike a balance between trade and services. Connectivity is crucial for physical as well as amongst people to people. However, these projects should be transparent, sustainable, viable, and based on trust, and empower nations and not put them under debt. India will promote democracy and rules-based international order. As a long cherished principle of its foreign policy, India is committed to multilateralism. India has several initiatives in the Indo-Pacific, bilaterally, trilaterally, as well as multilateral, where India and its various strategic partners work together with the common objectives in the Indo-Pacific. The initiatives that India has taken are presented briefly. And these give you an idea of how they're contributing towards realizing India's Indo-Pacific policy. These SAGAs, Security and Growth for All, IPOI, Quad Indian Ocean Naval Symposium, India's initiatives in blue economy and maritime security, and also in the Indian Ocean. Sagarmala and the policies towards Andaman and Nicobar aim to strengthen the domestic maritime sector. India's Indo-Pacific policies can be categorized under three themes. The first reflects the changing global order, which Dr. Navekar has briefly referred to, so I'll avoid repetition. But I really add that the Indo-Pacific is going to drive the global growth in the future. Indo-Pacific is also witnessing strategic maneuvers, and therefore India's Indo-Pacific vision becomes important, where it will work with all the stakeholders. So there are three stabilizing factors in the Indo-Pacific, which are information operations, DETRA, military assertions, and legal activities. Developing countries also require assistance, but they lack domestic capacity, hence they have to talk to foreign support. Therefore, India believes there is a need to establish credible, alternative, multiple financial assistance options. And lastly, current developments in Europe have raised questions on the stability of international order, and hence India's focus on its neighborhood and regional organizations will become more prominent. There is also certain perception of maritime security that drives India's Indo-Pacific policy. The Indian Ocean region countries had to do more for themselves in the last decade because of lesser resources and capabilities. Hence, intra-regional capabilities need to come into play, and India envisions a democratized response to maritime challenges, which means that it wants Indian Ocean region nations to develop capabilities on their own, so that the help shouldn't come just from one source. Also enhance regional efforts to individual and collective action, optimize responses, share best practices. The idea is to establish partnership with maritime neighbors, capacity enhancement, transparency and maritime domain awareness for all regional stakeholders, capabilities to establish maritime zones, continued engagements with like-minded countries to share information through logistical agreements, sustain effective and capable Indian presence wherever required in the region, continue training across regional units for interoperability across all regions. Terrorism has been a victim for a very, very long time, and it remains a primary concern. So terrorists are trained to operate at sea, and a particular brand of terrorists will become a global problem in the future. Then also there are opportunities in blue economy where there are lots of opportunities, but there are fewer capabilities. So it's important to develop skills and capacities across the region that allow countries to expand the maritime footprint in a sustainable manner. And this is where maritime powers can make valuable partnerships to meet the needs of regional countries and yield profitable outcomes. I will very quickly just summarize what are the major policies that India has. So SAGAR, which refers to security and growth of all, is India's vision for the entire Indian Ocean region. It is in consonance with India's active policy and nation's diplomatic, military, and economic outreach. Navy, the Indian Navy's anti-piracy operations it supports deployment in key regions. Its mission ready in the event of wide-ranging of contingency are some of the attributes of this policy. The focus area is to safeguard India's mainland and its islands, to ensure a safe, stable, and secure Indian Ocean for regional prosperity, deepen economic and security partnerships in the Indian Ocean region, capabilities, and contribute to capacity building and respond to HADR. The Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, under aegis of which all of us are here, the feature is to complement ASEAN mechanisms, but not remain restricted by it. It is IPOI is a cohesive Indian approach to existing partnerships with ASEAN, IORA, ACMEX, NGC, East Asia, and Asia-Europe meeting. It seeks to go beyond non-traditional maritime issues to larger issues in the maritime domain. Maritime security is a principal key. It wants to create a sustainable and peaceful environment, and multilateral focus on maritime security, India, under which India has recently pledged to end use of single-use plastic. So IPOI is an initiative launched by India, but it's an open global initiative. The SAGAR has a whole of government approach. The ION says is an Indian naval initiative which is voluntary and inclusive and brings together navies of your little. It is a cooperative mechanism and aims to achieve greater flow of information amongst naval professions. Then there are initiatives in blue economy and Savarna, which also seeks to expand itself globally. There are also certain reforms that need to be taken domestically. So blue economy and Sagarmala are one of those projects. So Sagarmala is a project about development of ports as well as port-led development, which intends to reduce the cost of transporting cargo, optimizing transportation, improving competitiveness, and developing proximate manufacturing clusters. And so there are certain categories about, but in the interest of time, I just stop at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anuradha, for bringing out Indian perspective on Indo-Pacific for various things like Sagarmala, the quad, and naval exercise, everything you have mentioned. One point I like to add in this context is the recent cooperation and trade agreement between India and Australia. That was one of the greatest steps in strengthening the Indo-Pacific unity. And it was described by Prime Minister Narendra Modi as a watershed moment. And another thing is that one Indian minister has very aptly pointed out that this Ekata, W mentioned ECTA, that is synonymous with the Hindi word Ekta, that means unity. I think this element of unity is very important point which you have highlighted the India's perspective for Indo-Pacific. Right? Then the next speaker is Mr. Alexander Satipal, expert in the legal field, and he will throw much light on the legal perspective of the maritime security and interrelated aspects.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, my science schools under public policy research, Monash University, and Department of Foreign Affairs and University. So, inviting me to this wonderful roundtable in the Pacific Ocean initiative. So I don't have a paper yet. So the paper I'm trying to write would be focusing on international law, because the key narrative in Indo-Pacific Oceans initiative particularly, or any of the regional groupings, is the narrative of rules-based international order, rules-based maritime order. And I think there are confusions, there are, it's just, most of the time, I feel it is a kind of a political rhetoric, just by making statements on dream of or having the ambition of rules-based order, particularly in the Pacific. So I'm going to focus on international law, throw some lights on certain state practices of international law, compare the approaches of two major powers in the region, and understand, compare how these countries generally are trying to achieve the dream of rules-based order. So international rule of law, and the two sub-themes that I'm going to touch upon is the idea of freedom of navigation and the settlement of maritime disputes, maritime boundary disputes specifically. And so the idea of my paper is to try and evaluate by making statements like rules-based international order or international rule of law, to what extent the countries are actually intending to maintain and ensure rules-based order in this region. So just to give an instance of making a political rhetoric justification, I would call it as nonsensical justification on the basis of international law, is the recent war and the justification given by Vladimir Putin to justify his aggression or Russia's invasion of Ukraine. That was also based on Article 51 of the Charter, where he defended saying that we are acting on the pretext of self-defense and self-preservation, because he apprehends that the eastern Ukraine is going to be genocide of Russian, whatever it is. But coming to the point, so similar kind of blatant violations of international law and justifications on the basis of international rule of law, we can see in the region aspect, in the Pacific. So I have two specific cases as case studies to try and give you that analysis. So the first case is the South China Sea arbitration, where Philippines instituted an arbitration and closed arbitration against China because they wanted to claim sovereignty over the region of South China Sea. And of course, the claims were also the United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea, which is approved by an award, the Arbitration Award against China. And interestingly, even during the arbitral process and after the arbitral process, China openly denounced this whole mechanism of control and arbitration and award by the arbitral tribunal. That is the first case. And second case, I'm trying to just to give you a context of how the use and misuse of international law and letters of rules-based order play out in reality and in a geographical context. The second case in hand is the Indonesia incident, which happened over 100 kilometers away from the space, the coast of Kerala, where two Italian Marines shot and killed Indian fishermen on a fishing vessel. And of course, the case went on for about 10 years, starting from the local courts in Cochin up to the Supreme Court. I'm not saying that India was compliant with during the process, at least during the initial period of the contestation. India used the domestic interpretations of international law and tried to retain the jurisdiction. However, at the end stage, when the unclosed tribunal, again, an Annex 7 unclosed arbitration tribunal heard the matter, and the award was then kind of in favor of Italian Marines because of their immunity and other grounds. But the difference here is India as a country and the judicial mechanism, the Supreme Court was respectful of that award and basically post all the criminal proceedings and surrender the jurisdiction to the national jurisdiction of Italy. So two diverging approaches to international law on the question of whether country is actually intended to maintain and secure so-called rules-based international order. And interestingly, post our South China Sea, coming back to South China Sea, Indonesia, the creation of new artificial islands, militarization of Chinese Navy and Coast Guard, and they interestingly enacted two national legislations post and post. So in an international legal system, if you're a party, if you have ratified a particular treaty, then you have to play by the rules of the game. Of course, there are issues of national sovereignty, your national interests, everything comes when it comes to foreign policy, etc. But since you're part of an international legal order, and that is at the core of the so-called rules-based international. So, failing to comply with or obey the rules of international legal system and the adjudication mechanisms, they have created new national legislation, which is one on the law of territorial sea and continuous on. Then the recent one is the last year's Chinese Coast Guard law, which again violated, which is in blatant violation of the rule and the principle of innocent passage. Whereas the Chinese Navy and Chinese ships have been enjoying this the so-called rule of innocent passage in other parts of the world. This, of course, threatens the maritime security, not only in the region, not only to the neighboring countries, but I mean, this is a pattern of the hegemonic ambition. This is my whole argument in favor of an emerging superpower. But if you compare the approach taken by India and similar other leading powers in the region, respecting international law and trying to remain as a soft power. But this has a problem because when an emerging superpower is trying to assert their domestic versions of international law, so the next point I'm trying to make is, of course, as an academic, I have an interest in bit of history and theory of international law. So the paper will also be dealing with to support my argument of this hegemonic ambitions of China. So we can also look at how international assets was evolved from the 16th, 17th century when Hugo Grotius, the lawyer, registered in a company, trying to sort of capture the Portuguese vessels and establish this whole idea of the human occupancy, the concept of human. And of course, we've had so many modifications to that particular concept, and we have the new the latest UNCLOS, which gives certain rights to coastal countries, and we have different definition of different maritime zones. But the comparison again is about this Chinese assertion or Chinese claim of based on 9-9 claim and the claim of historical rights to sort of assert or maintain that sovereignty over the entire region of South China Sea. I think is can be compared with the opposite argument of those two, because they don't want an open sea where they can the Chinese Navy and Coast Guard can actually control what is happening in that region, which basically means that even if it's a commercial ship, we need to take permission from Chinese authorities for entering that territory, because they consider it as part of their territory. They have absolute sovereignty over that. So the point is international Chinese characteristics. So this domestic version of international Chinese international indicates the China's master plan and going back to the whole European colonial history. And interestingly, if you look at the history of UNCLOS again, both India and China were active participants in the third UNCLOS. They actively participated in the 10-year period of negotiation, and particularly China wanted to align with all the third world countries so that they can counter the assertiveness of the then superpowers USSR and US. But now, maybe 30, 40 years later, in 2000, essentially they have so-called rules-based international, because they say that they become a rule maker even though they have ratified the convention. Whereas if you take another superpower, the US has never ratified the law of the convention because of their national interest. But China ratified the convention because of the national interest at that time, but it clearly shows that the national interests have changed for the US past the ratification. So these are, of course, these elements are of course antithetical to the so-called rules-based international or ratification of international treaties purely based on the national interest, non-participation in dispute settlement mechanisms, and of course, compliance with arbitral or adjudicative decisions by international judiciary. So the last point I want to make more as a regional grouping or the partnership of IPOI can deliver. So when international law fails to deliver or multilateral frameworks to the UN Charter or the UNCLOS or the UN Security Council, of course, bilateral, unilateral, plurilateral engagements can do many things. But just to make reference to the two important alliances that are in place in the region, Quad and AUKUS. I'm not sure to what extent both AUKUS, because it's a very recent phenomenon, but Quad has been there for at least a few years. But I haven't seen any kind of assertiveness on the side of Quad, particularly to respond to the Chinese, specifically to the Chinese announcement of the South China Sea arbitration award. So, I mean, there were statements from foreign ministers, of course, but when an emerging superpower is trying to build the whole international rule of law, you need to play a similar game as a partnership, as a regional grouping. You need to engage in what I call, or other scholars also call it as law. You have to use international law as a weapon to respond to such blatant violations. You need to call out claims, you have to make statements. So one example example that I have in mind, just to compare the recent Australia's open call or receptiveness to open the open investigation, we call it open, sorry, which is investigation to the origins of COVID-19 pandemic. That is unilateral action, which is followed by trade disputes between Australia and China. So there are weaknesses, there are problems with one country unilateral actions against major superpower like China. So in that context, I think IPOI as a regional grouping has a major role to play. At least the only point that I'm trying to make, not to make a grand narrative of on based on geoeconomics or geopolitical science. Just you need to engage in lawfare, use international aspect and to respond to the blatant violations of international, whether it's China or Russia or any other superpower.
Thank you, Doctor. Very essential for your presentation on the legal perspective for those of the Indo-Pacific issues. You have well brought out how this international law can be brought up by using or enacting some domestic or national laws, as happened in this Philippines versus China case of international tribunal, arbitrary tribunal, and in this kind of cases. So your point is well taken. For example, this regional setup like for may not be in a position to take up such mandates at the regional level and except for separate level for the acknowledgement of UNCLOS right attention service seats. The main drawback in this case is the lack of identification of UNCLOS by certain countries. You rightly pointed out that while India and China have certified, but at the same time, China is technically violating it by enacting domestic or national law. This thing is happening. So, as I mentioned about the protection of the rule of conscience in 09, in the Irish law, the Denmark law, this protection is that is also related to the rule-based law. The point is that the sea is covered for because of it is limitless and no one can take possession of it. So it is adapted for the use of the fact is that no nations are abiding the protections for the legal aspect of the rule of fiction. And I invite the speaker, Mr. will mainly deal with the more development and capacity. So I invite Mr. Franco for presenting this.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you again, Center for Public Policy, Research Coaching from Monash University. So, this afternoon, I'll share a few points on port investment in Southeast Asia and state potential for cooperation for So I argue that there's a lot of scope for cooperation in building maritime infrastructure, especially ports in Southeast Asia. These investments will go a long way to spur domestic connectivity, especially for insular or coastal countries in the region. We can download those strategic and connectivity divisions of regional countries and invested countries. For instance, at Indonesia's global maritime program, where the Philippines will build connectivity linking India's activist policy, strategy, or in this case, the Pacific Ocean division. India and Australia and other countries in the region can capitalize on the burgeoning demand for infrastructure financing in the region. These projects are, of course, commercial, but they also very military and strategic underpinnings due to Southeast Asia's strategic location and prevailing geopolitics. For instance, these projects can provide temporary or alternatives to state-backed finance and allow more legroom for regional countries to negotiate better with other active infrastructure partners. Many of these projects are commercial deals, but diplomatic and government can help it provide a framework from which these disparate transactions can be anchored on. Indian, Australian companies can leverage their experience and existing portfolios working in Southeast Asia to play larger roles in this space. Indian company Adani Ports, for instance, has investments in container port terminals in Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam. GMR, another Indian company, also has airport projects in Cebu, Clark, and Manila in the Philippines. Australian construction companies like Clayton and Oricon have diverse infrastructure portfolio in Southeast Asia. Shipbuilding Oslo, another Australian company, have presence in Cebu, in the Philippines. The Southeast Asian countries continue to diversify economic partners to avoid overexposure to a limited pool of investors and creditors. For example, Indonesia and India jointly developing deep sea port of Sabang in western Sumatra Aceh province. And this can enhance the connectivity of India's Andaman and Nicobar Islands with that of Sumatra. The two sides are just 90 nautical miles away. And this project, of course, both commercial and security implications. The strategic value of the port cannot be overstated. It's very proximate to the Malacca Strait choke point, and of course, the port may provide the venue to host bilateral maritime exercises and naval and coast guard ship visits between the two countries. During the 2018 visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Indonesia, the port was cited as one of the priorities in the shared vision of maritime cooperation in the Indo-Pacific of both countries. But such investments also face some hurdles of late. For instance, in October 2021, India's Adani Ports announced that they would be divesting from Alone Airport project in Yangon, Myanmar, following the political crisis in that country. We know that Myanmar state is not really the darling of foreign capital, not the best time to invest. Sanctions against Myanmar led to an exit of foreign capital from the country and pressure on those that continue to do business there grows. The port of Alone is owned by a military-linked conglomerate, the Myanmar Economic Cooperation, and of course, there is some sanctions. It remains to be seen whether political parties in Myanmar will be resolved to make the country amenable again, attractive again to foreign capital. That said, of course, we know other countries remain involved in infrastructure projects in the country. Elsewhere, India is also investing big investment in Sri Lanka port terminal. Australia is also funding port upgrades company. So connecting these dots will go a long way. Private investments in maritime infrastructure like ports in Southeast Asia can help spur inter-island and maritime connectivity in the region. It depends on economic dimension in Indo-Pacific cooperation that is often underappreciated and often overshadowed by the security. A robust economic pillar will help strengthen Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, make it more attractive for regional partners. And India, thank you again, CPPR, IPAC, monitors.
I think Mr. Kalyanko. So capacity building is one of the right tickets of this IPOI, and you have brought out how important is the capacity building for strengthening the regional cooperation. In this context, you have rightly pointed out the role by Adani Group and GMR Group, and have made investments in various of these countries, including Myanmar. But at the same time, sometimes commercial or the political rhetoric will create some problem at the time of investment. But the point that we have to take into consideration is that will give some impetus for the growth of infrastructure that will give further improvement in the connectivity and the strengthening of the regional cooperation. So thank you very much for your presentation. And next is I invite Mr. Siswanto Rusty for presenting his paper.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mones. Thank you, CPPR, for inviting me. I will be short. Actually, I have a better smartphone, but I think it's particular. In my opinion, as an Indonesian, in Australia, India, Indo-Pacific Ocean is more on a strategy for security. That's why in Indonesia, we conduct more and more seminar on security, security and strategic things regarding this. But we still do not enter geo-economy, whereas we have a huge opportunity roster. For example, Indonesia has so many ports, and other Asean countries, they have also a big opportunity for shipping, for port, or whatever. But they lack initiative, they lack enthusiasm, because this as I said earlier, that's strategy for security. And then for India, I think India is a member of Indian Ocean Association. We need to do more of this parts of Indonesia, but of course Indonesia cannot do it alone. So I think except the Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative, India, Indonesia, and other ASEAN countries must also be Indian Ocean Ring Association, because we have so many countries big oceans, but we lack of discussion, we lack of seminar, we lack of conference. So we hope in the future Indian Ocean Ring Association, IOI, and the Indian and ASEAN connection or platform must be used, must be. We have to engage in this platform, not only Indo-Pacific, not only Australia, we have another countries also things. I think that's important. Thank you.
Thank you. This is what was the representation worked out. Then now we have three presentations, virtual presentations. The first one is Dr. Derek Farford. Dr. Derek Farford will make a virtual presentation on topic. I invite Dr. Derek Farford for presenting his papers.
Yeah, is it okay? You can hear me? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for this very kind invitation. Such a pleasure to be part of this panel, even from far away. And thanks as well for this very stimulating topic project, which focuses on Australia, India, and ASEAN as well, three key pillars of the Indo-Pacific. I guess that the French cannot afford to be indifferent towards your partnership. It is true that it reminds us of Macron's, our president, first idea in 2018 to build a strong axis from Paris, New Delhi to Canberra, and the subsequent trilateral dialogue in 2021, while Paris was moving in parallel closer to ASEAN as a new development partner. That said, above all, this partnership also echoes the French diplomatic doctrine, which has for decades pushed actors to behave independently, or I would say shamelessly, in a certain way. This doctrine mirrors the Indian non-alignment or the Indonesian bebas actif. tradition. But let's put France apart, aside, and let's be back to your partnership, so promising, which raises just two main comments. Firstly, interestingly, this partnership and this initiative, it comes together with other current initiatives, I mean, seminars or meetings or exercises, which shed light on the regional and not only the usual great powers. I refer, for example, to this last EU Indo-Pacific Forum last February, 2 months ago, and neither Washington nor Beijing actually attended the event, while Australian, Indian, and some ASEAN ministers traveled to Europe for that. And in the wake of Prof. Badi's work, this recent trend will show that the regional powers can help other, maybe smaller countries of the global south to, I don't know, take the lead, for example, in terms of maritime security, to be more autonomous and to move ahead away from the only Chinese-US dilemma, which may sometimes confine initiatives. And in this process, regional powers like Australia, India, and maybe, I don't know, Japan or South Korea as well, should play as a big brothers rather than tutors or guardian. And this could be seen as a kind of empathic abang diplomacy or big brother diplomacy. But secondly, and for this reason, to precisely create a strong and deeply anchored Indo-Pacific, this axis, New Delhi, Jakarta, or ASEAN and Canberra, should be a starting point and I think a backbone to go further and to strengthen the cooperation, as I refer to the title of this session. And this strong frame should be connected in priority to other sub-regions like Indian Oceania, you know, Seychelles, Mauritius, Madagascar, via India maybe, and Southern Pacific via Australia. And in this aim, it takes to reinforce the existing wave of relationship to sustain a dense network across the strait and the two oceans. There are indeed already plenty of connection between countries of this sub-region through pragmatic and trans-regional initiatives. No time to list all of them, but in the maritime security sphere, let's mention only two, the Bay of Bengal initiative for multi-sectoral technical and economic cooperation between ASEAN and South Asia, also the Coral Triangle initiative between ASEAN and Southern Pacifics. Moreover, besides many regional free trade agreements, most of these countries are already part of existing groups, like, for example, the Alliance of Small Island States or the Small Island Developing States as well within the United Nations. And all these countries or small countries or islands have to address similar and critical threats from the oceans, like sea level rise, challenge, plastic pollution, and tsunamis. Last but not least, you know that two ASEAN members are leading vast organizations this year involving many Indo-Pacific countries, Cambodia, the chair of APEC, and Indonesia, the chair of the G20. So to conclude at the end of the day, if we zoom out, how can such vivid networks at various levels interact with great powers, especially with the USA because of its two quasi-alliances, namely Quad and AUKUS. I don't know, better and clearer than any Quad or AUKUS plus, you know, on the model of the ADMM plus. I have this question, naive maybe, but is it that absurd to compare this situation with the one in Europe where Brussels promotes its so-called strategic autonomy with the support of Washington, and while most of its members in parallel are part of the 1949 Washington Treaty? This win-win process rather than a rivalry, as sometimes people see, but no, this win-win process and a more coordinated European Union automatically reinforces NATO and could be also seen maybe the same process in Indo-Pacific. It could possibly maintain the ASEAN centrality and more precisely a similar mix of bilateral or mini-lateral agreement or partnership, like see all the information fusion centers in Singapore, Madagascar, New Delhi, and even in Peru, away from the exclusive US umbrella and maybe targeting direct trade to the countries, could actively contribute to the maritime security in general and to the freedom of navigation or the rule of law in general, which are our common values and shared principles. Thank you very much. I hope it was not long.
Asean countries for strengthening the Indo-Pacific regional security apparatus. And you have also highlighted that the superpowers, especially USA, and such countries like France should play a more constructive role in bringing up more coordinated effort among the ASEAN countries. It is definitely, you highlighted the point that despite bilateral or multilateral dialogue, there are differences among the ASEAN countries or the Southeast countries that is posing a major problem for the centrality or the unity of the Indo-Pacific. You have highlighted this aspect, and also how US involvement is also creating some problem in some states on the basis of the 1949 agreement. Now, it is pertinent to point out one point is that in the light of the 2+2 dialogue recently held between India and the US, now some more initiative have come from the side of US administration to strengthen the Indo-Pacific security apparatus. One such thing is that sea patrols, if the joint sea patrols will be started in India along with the US vessels, and also there will be special US building facilities will be given to some countries like India. It's a notable achievement and has come in the light of the 2+2 dialogue recently taken between the two countries. Thank you once again for your presentation. Just we will go to the next presentation, the virtual presentation. Dr. White and will be making the virtual presentation. I invite Dr. Van Heidan to present your paper.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me and see me well? Thank you. You dream it, we make it. That is the slogan for wedding designers. So Indian and Australian friends, thank you for sharing with us your dream about a Indo-Pacific reunion between India, Australia, and ASEAN. Now let us, ASEAN, design it for you. First, in terms of institutional arrangement, we could organize an ASEAN +2 meeting between ASEAN, Australia, and India foreign affairs ministers. That would not be a big problem for ASEAN since every year ASEAN only organize an ASEAN plus India and ASEAN Australia Minister Foreign Affairs meeting. So now we just need to combine them together. And if there are enough momentum to discuss cooperation in specific issues, ASEAN could also organize ASEAN +2 meetings between defense, trade, environment, transport, and other relevant ministers. This is the approach that ASEAN adopted for the ASEAN +3 cooperation between ASEAN, China, Japan, and South Korea. In terms of Track 2 cooperation, we could invite India to join the existing ASEAN, Australia, and New Zealand dialogue, hosted by ASEAN Link and ISIS Malaysia. ASEAN Link is a research center from Australia, to discuss security, strategic issues, and to discuss cooperation. Now, what are the issues of trilateral convergence between ASEAN, India, and Australia? The first issue is the respect of international law and freedom of navigation in the South China Sea. I know the South China Sea is more concern for ASEAN. However, the peaceful management and the peaceful resolution of the South China Sea disputes would affect the maritime security of the Indo-Pacific region as a whole. And besides, India and Australia has publicly expressed support to the rule of law and freedom of navigation in the South China Sea. The second issue is improving connectivity between ASEAN, Australia, and India by submarine cables. There are many submarine cable systems that connect between ASEAN and India and between ASEAN and Australia. However, there's only one submarine cable system that connects Australia, India, and going through Malaysia, which is the CMeW3. We need to improve the connection between India and Australia by submarine cable because it could improve the communication and business linkages between two very important countries, and ASEAN can serve as a transiting area. Third issue, establishing protected sites for marine turtles. ASEAN member states, Australia and India are all signatories of the MOU for the protection of marine turtles in the Indian Ocean and Southeast Asia. And according to this MOU, signatories have to design a network of protected sites for marine turtles. So far, 11 sites have been designated, 3 of which are from Southeast Asia. Thamila Island in Myanmar, Kondao Island in Vietnam, and Turtle Island Wildlife Sanctuary in the Philippines. So we could cooperate to designate sites in India and Australia. There's no site designated for India and Australia yet. And I suggest that we can designate a site for protection of marine turtles in the Kerala state, which is a very important nesting area for turtles. In Australia, we could designate the Great Barrier Reef as a site for protection of marine turtles because it's a very important habitat for marine turtles there. Furthermore, we could cooperate to create partnership between those individual sites in order to enhance the cooperation of marine turtles in the region. Finally, we could improve the management of marine plastic waste. Marine plastic waste is a very serious issue for maritime Southeast Asia, for the Bay of Bengal, and for the sea surrounding Australia. In March of this year, at the United Nations Environmental Assembly 5.2, countries in the world have agreed that we will negotiate for a global treaty for plastic pollution. Most of ASEAN member states, India and Australia, supported this initiative. So this is an opportunity for us to increase our management of marine plastic waste at the regional level and also to implement our international commitments. And to kick off the ASEAN +2 Indo-Pacific cooperation, I suggest India, ASEAN, and Australia could implement a cooperative project on marine plastic management waste in Indonesia. So why Indonesia? Because Indonesia is located at the center of the Indo-Pacific. So plastic waste generated by Indonesia would go 3 ways: to the maritime Southeast Asia, to the Bay of Bengal, and to the seas surrounding Australia. So if we manage to improve the marine plastic waste management in Indonesia, we improve the situation in the region as a whole. And Indonesia is the second biggest discharger of plastic waste in the oceans after China. The other thing is, Indonesia have implemented a lot of research relating to plastic waste. So what are the activities that we can implement under this project? First, you can track the itinerary of plastic litters in Indonesia. You can organize beach cleaning activity for coastal communities. You can promote circular economy for treatment of plastic waste. And we can support the implementation of suggestions from plastic waste research in Indonesia. As I said, Indonesia have done a lot of research in plastic waste, even more than Japan and South Korea. So those was my concrete suggestions on how we can advance our ASEAN +2 Indo-Pacific cooperation between ASEAN, India, and Australia. Last but not least, we have to come up with the name for our cooperation. We already have AUKUS between Australia, UK, and US, and I suggest we have OIC for Australia, India, and Southeast Asia. Thank you.
Dr. Valentine, for your presentation highlighting the importance of environment, the environmental issues, especially the rate of plastic and other things. The ASEAN countries also should take an important role, with a particular reference to mention about Australia. And it is also indicated that Australia can play a very vital role in strengthening the Indo-Pacific security architect. Many experts point out that playing a very constructive or leading role in God and with better or closer relations with ASEAN countries of the region, the Australia can emerge as the western and eastern flank of the Indo-Pacific and can form a stable, open, and free Indo-Pacific position. That will be that is a greater respect especially in the South China and West China. So now we are coming to the last presentation of my Professor Kirti Basiran and Professor of Political Science. I invite Mr. Kirti Basiran for presenting the paper.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here with you. I hope you hear me well from Bangkok, Thailand. Today, I would like to talk about an ASEAN perspective on FOIP, Free and Open Indo-Pacific, and the IPOI that we are discussing today, Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiatives. I divide my talk into two questions. How does ASEAN take it, FOIP and also IPOI, and what can be the way forward or the suggestion from ASEAN perspective? I have to operate. All right. For the take of ASEAN on FOIP, there are minus side and plus side. For the minus side, so ASEAN was concerned that FOIP designed to balance against China or contain China, and just the continuation or pivot to Asia, and concern for being pressure to take sides. And until recently, the initiative quite unclear what would be the concrete cooperations. But today, I think it's a great pleasure that we hear a more specific collaborative proposal from Australia, India, and also from ASEAN, our colleague, Dr. Dang. And I think ASEAN has been concerned of ASEAN being bypassed or ignored or undermine ASEAN centrality. And for ASEAN centrality, I think ASEAN is not that ambitious. We do not aim to become the center stage of everything, but we just would like to provide platform, forum, venue for dialogue, venue for collaborations with many major powers involved. And of course, not to be ignored by the major power. Because of the arrangement of the Quad, all the major power, the US, Japan, Australia, and India. So that can't help but create some concern among ASEAN countries. So we emphasize centrality pretty much. But ASEAN also has a perception, the plus side of the FOIP, because it can offer alternative infrastructure apart from the Belt and Road Initiative from China. We do not want to depend on China alone. And cooperation from the Quad can also help countervail Chinese influence in Southeast Asia, which tend to be domineering in many countries. And importantly, Indo-Pacific strategy would give some attentions and also action from major power. And I think IPOI is a good initiative to kickstart the action and measures of corporations in concrete terms among countries in the regions. I think you may be familiar with the ASEAN Outlook on the Asia Pacific, which has been adopted in 2019 when Thailand hosted the ASEAN Summit. So we developed collective view from ASEAN member country. We would like to turn strategy into cooperation with inclusive, not exclusive. We emphasize openness, inclusivity based on ASEAN centrality, and we would like the major power to use the East Asia summit as a platform and also some working mechanism under the institutional arrangement of ASEAN. And ASEAN, in fact, can be more than a platform of dialogue. ASEAN can be the actual site for concrete cooperation. For example, Thailand can be a place for cooperation on train system can take place in Thailand between China and also Japan. They mentioned the third country collaborations in infrastructure. And of course, today our discussion on IPOI is greatly welcome. I think we face a lot of problems in the oceans. The sea plastic debris is a critical issue in ASEAN. Among ASEAN countries, I believe Indonesia, Thailand, and the Philippines are ranked among the top 3 countries that produce sea debris in the world, not in the regions. So the problem is quite huge. We need to tackle the problem with the assistance collaboration from Australia and India, who also share the ocean. In terms of capacity building, research, and various forms of collaborations. So, I missed it, not the wall forward, the way forward, the way forward. I have 5 suggestions. First, emphasis on issue of common interest. I think we have abundant issue of common interest that India, Australia, and ASEAN share together. And I think our colleague also mentions about that. Secondly, concrete initiative with 2E focus, economic and environment. Economic and environment, I think this is very beneficial for all the countries involved and less sensitive one. But if we collaborate on security, I think from ASEAN, we would like to focus on the NTS, non-traditional security, HADR, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, and probably cyber security. And we would like to have substantive cooperation and commitments from the major power involved. Recalling the pivot of Asia under Obama, it doesn't come with much commitments. Fifth, last but not least, working with ASEAN-related platform. We have already had quite a few platforms that India, Australia, and ASEAN can work together. And that can be inclusive. Japan, US can join on, or even other countries. So that ends my presentation. Thank you for your attention. My pleasure to be with you today.
Their data, their activities, environment, costing, so many issues to cover, and cyber security, humanitarian aid, a wide range of subjects to have covered in your talk. An excellent presentation. Thank you once again for your nice presentation. Now, this distinguished us selected times of 15 minutes left. So the section is open for the questions and section. If you want about the star questions, and this speakers will give a question that the participants can ask their questions. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. From the larger schools for someone else because they have asked this question. This might seem like a cheeky question, but it's not. It's going through my head. I've been thinking about IPOI thing for last week. So we are over. We had other sides of the session with the National Maritime Foundation recently, and we had a session with the Delhi Policy as well. I just wanted to ask Indian friend, one question. Why is it you think, I'm not trying to cheat you, why is it you think most South Asian countries is joined by IPOI. When we signed up the usual suspects, Australia, the French, and Vietnam was the one target. Why do you think, sir? Just trying to understand why you think this.
Question, thank you. Mostly, it's the perception. And as we understand maritime security, however, we may speak about NDAs, we may speak about HDR, but there is always an underlying strategic element to it. So even if you want to formulate some concrete international cooperation projects, let's say the maritime security, there are going to be suspicions. For instance, when India has this project about coastal radar surveillance system, and there also there is a great deal of time to build that trust. So, and IPOI is again relatively a much newer initiative. So, it also, I think, the responsibility would also lie with, say, India has initiated it. So, what part of it can be canvassed better in Southeast Asia? What is it that could be approached, or could we have a more downward approach? What is it that ASEAN wants? Perhaps somewhere, if we can develop joint technologies in MPA or some sort of defensive equipment, perhaps then there will be then it will have more acceptance. Thank you.
Yes. Look, when the launch release fun. India, Australia, sometimes assistance because at the very end of this operation, we need money, right? We need to build our ports, to build our fishing port, to build our maritime economies, whatever. So how do we do it? We have Australia, India. Do you have? I'm sorry to say this. Do you have money for it?
When we know what we are competing against, we are also aware of our limitations. And the biggest problem is systemic difference. We can't be telling our brothers that go to so country and put money because we want it. Whereas in China, the system that they have, their state-owned enterprises, they have the luxury of where there's no differentiation between state and the enterprises. That's it. This limitations is very well taken, and that is understood as a fundamental problem. That this is where there is going to be a limitation. So, under the aegis of the Quad or even the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, there has been some work trying to see what are the alternative financial options that we can come up. Personally, I feel that matching actual physical infrastructure with Chinese is a game that you wouldn't want to play. You should, the Quad or the members should rather focus on what is it that their strength, where their strength lies, and what is it that they can offer. Perhaps digital connectivity or health connectivity or the software issues is what they can match upon. Also, because when it comes to the Chinese infrastructure projects, a lot of them have not been realized fully. There are a lot of questions that have been raised about it. So that said, it's not that even Chinese projects are 100% successful or that they have seen, they have their own conditionalities. but your point is well taken. So I feel we should firstly genuinely try to see if we can find alternative financial options, and if not, then at least enhance capacities in this region where the countries are able to assess what are the funds that are coming to them and what is there. In a way, because as long see our private sector banks will only go if those projects are going to be commercially viable. So if some connectivity project in Southeast Asia can benefit a certain an investor, then certainly those will get.
Thank you. Someone raised IPOI, which is a predecessor to this issue. When ASEAN had a great opportunity with India as a main player, Australia. However, in the course of the relationship activities and all the primary areas of IPOI, ASEAN was very lukewarm, including the states that we see in that. I'm coming from the perspective of national security, where one of the 8 pillars of this initiative is also managed capacity building, resources, and all. And today we are talking about goals, Ascent, urban triangle, police man, and there's a huge area of that require capacity agencies. And that must go back to IORA as a platform for this initiative, India and Australia, strengthening on the sites, and then addressing this issue. It was addressed in IORA, but it never got. So now we have a better opportunity to focus on the sites, India to address coming to pause, and which I will address more with time. But this thing has to talk. We have to talk about this. Opiates and drugs. So there is an avenue, identity and capacity building. So any funds that are allocated in this round, I would suggest that capacity building in the form of tabletop exercises to look at process flows for operation and addressing this need to be studied. So let's talk contingencies and all that. Tabletop access for capacity. You see the process flow, be ready for this.
Right. Thank you, Captain, for your enlightening question open to the floor. Before answering this, I put my views on that thing. It's a very rightly pointed out that the maritime security, apart from terrorism, contraband, smuggling, and other activities are very strong for projects from holding private land to various parts of the So the individual countries, ASEAN countries are taking a lot of steps to strengthen the mechanism. For example, the Indian side, as you are captain, you are aware of the Coast Guard security of they are preparing non-animal vessels for air recognition, for interception of boats within the this area. And similarly, the interrelationship with the Coast Guard of India and other countries, for example, Indonesia or even the USA, which will interact peacefully. So such mechanisms will definitely strengthen this operational angle of the fight against contracts. Your suggestion is validly taken. Other members or other parties can also.
I just make a brief comment.
fascinating stuff in terms of capacity building. As a matter of fact, I find the word capacity building in almost every joint statement. It appears at serial 4, 5, 6, 7. And it's there. I mean, we already acknowledge it in this purpose. The purpose of this dialogue is also capacity to identify. But we tend to forget that Indo-Pacific is such a large space. Each region, if you were to dissect the region, you would find at least 6 sub-regions appearing. Bay of Bengal, I don't need capacity building for a certain kind of an activity. Whereas I need a lot for the, let me say, the North region, so each region, sub-region rather, Indo-Pacific as we very broadly, some regions require absolutely typical to the needs and they have to be tailored. Now here when we're talking capacity building can bring lots of sensitivity. They're very highly sensitive. To bring in an item over there or say a capacity of service to that extent, it is not taken lightly by the other side. So it's much more complex than we see as stated in the MOU or MOUs or for that matter joint statement. So probably it would require is that capacity building should be chosen very carefully in terms of critical sensitivities in the region. Is also what you have. I mean, everybody's got no capacity. You're going to be switching selecting. So my suggestion would be that let's study Indo-Pacific or Indo-Pacific Ocean. Let's say disaggregate in terms of geography. I still remember 2 years ago, we was in a conference of the Indian Ocean Dialogue, again, Indian Ocean IPOI, and it did emerge from there that they're quite comfortable with the idea of Indo-Pacific, of Africa. As a matter of fact, one of them, they said that we also have a view. You have an Asean view of Indo-Pacific, the Indian view of Indo-Pacific, the Australian view, the Japanese view, the American. What about the African view? Do you think Africa is not part of the Indo-Pacific? So probably we've left out that continent completely. That's again we have a bit truncated view. So when we look at the broader Indo-Pacific, we must bring it. This is my suggestion. We must have scholars also, these scholars particularly add into this. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I really want to have a question to Dr. Satyapana. The case between the Philippines and China over the South China Sea. You know that after the ruling was that China refused to recognize. Because of course, the reality is that there's no police to look after the case. But for myself, I think that the ruling also has its own value. As a scholar of the legal studies, so could you please inform more about the value of the visa ruling, especially the case between the Philippines and China over the South China Sea? Thank you.
Thank you for that excellent question. So just take your final point before I go into the larger problem of enforcement and law. Philippines basically instituted an arbitration against China under the Convention under the Sea, and they went to the arbitration tribunal because countries have different options under the treaty. So the arbitral tribunal basically, and the Chinese claim is that based on the domestic version of historical rights and 9-9, etc. They wanted to claim absolute sovereignty. So according to the United Nations Convention, countries have 12 nautical miles of territorial sea, and for that you have 200 nautical miles of exclusive economic zone. But the Chinese claim, based on the historical rights, etc., and 9-9, their sovereignty and exclusive economic zone extended beyond the 200 nautical miles because they wanted to sort of connect all the different islands some parcel islands and some islands. Right. This was, of course, was against the norms set by the convention, and the tribunal accepted Philippines' argument. So, as I said in my presentation, the Chinese never participated in the process, and they rejected the ruling as well. Now, this is a very brief background of the story. Now, to the question on the policing, right? How do you, what are the options available? Because the ruling itself, of course, it tells us the fact that international there are problems with effectiveness, compliance, implementation, etc. But the fact that these rulings are valid, and again, you have different other examples. You can also compare the recent examples and the ICJ, where they made a decision against the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I agree that beyond the point that international law and international judiciary, whether it's ICJ or the unenforced specific mechanisms are in place, it is because of the design of the international legal order, because we don't have sort of a world government or a global government. So if you compare it with the domestic law, so if I extend my territory, my property to my neighbor's land, of course, it is a violation of domestic law, and there is a process by which I can be punished. Similarly, in international law, we have a system, but beyond that, it's a question because that's a cutting question for international legal system. Having said that, if you look at the data statistics, it is maybe a few countries like China and the so-called superpowers have formed the extent of openly denouncing such decisions. But most of the decisions, I mean, you have a number of maritime boundary disputes and awards and other against other countries, and the literature shows that most of them have automatically complied.
The thing is, it is the lawfare against China lately. So, but you know that the fact that China has been as a superpower, China leaders to recognize the ruling. So, how can we have a lawfare, especially for those countries surrounding China?
Yeah. So, what I meant by lawfare, or what the literature talks about lawfare, is because again, Philippines was the statement, and if you look at the statements from even from the Philippine government, and even you can look at the Asean or other regional groupings, the statements all holding out this is a violation, because my argument is that you talk of this, the grand narrative of rules-based international order, but when you have a blatant violation of an international, I do agree with your point that they don't recognize. You can't say that they don't recognize because they are party to the international legal system. They are party to UNCLOS. It is not like US saying that we don't recognize UNCLOS because they're not ratified the convention. But here, a country which is ratified the convention, you have to play by the norms of that particular institution. Now, for international law, truly, from that perspective, it is a violation. By lawfare, what I meant was, if a country is so aggressive or assertive,
sorry for the interruption.
Yeah, so I'm just concluding. So my point is, whether it is Philippines, the actual payment, all the regional groupings to which Philippines is part of, all the neighboring countries which are interested in this case should make use of international law in the sense that they should make an assertive statement at least and try, because lawfare is not the kind of warfare that you're looking at. You have limitations, but usage of international law with an ethical sense against such kinds of data violations law. Maybe we can assist also.
Thank you for all the speakers and participants and all the issues. Because of the time constraints, yes, we are writing up this section because section of law there is an important issue. inaugural section is there. For your participation and the long discussions and the very useful discussions. Once again, I congratulate and thank all the speakers and all the listening boosters and participants. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Mr. K. Thomas. Thank you, everyone, for the insightful discussion on IPOI. The purpose of this session was to share the views of bright minds of the region on Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative. We would also like to extend our gratitude to the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Australian government, and the officials who joined us here today for supporting and enabling the Scholar Summit and conference. Also extending our sincere gratitude to the Deputy Consul General, Mr. Michael Costa, of Australian Consul General in Chennai, who joined us here for the roundtable. We shall take a small break and gather again for the inaugural ceremony at 7 sharp. Please help yourself with refreshments and coffee.